Welcome back. Continuing this fascinating discussion with political expert Craig Smith. Before we continue, let me put in a plug for our new Straight Talk Reporter, which is out at our sponsor outlets as we speak. On the cover, you'll see an article referencing our guest, the political expert Craig Smith. And Craig has also written the guest column in this issue of the newsletter called Unscrambling the Eggs. If you're interested in what we're talking about tonight, you can read that column in the newsletter, which is free. It's also online at straighttalktv.com. Craig, let's talk about some solutions, and you refer to several of them in your guest column. And let's start with the idea of a constitutional convention to start the whole thing. How does that work?
Well, let me tell you, like many other people, I'm fed up. I mean, I've really had it. We go to these budget processes that last into September and October every year. We don't know what money we're going to have. If you're a CSU trustee, you don't know how much is going to be spent. You don't know what kind of fees to charge the students.
And let me just back up for a second. The reason you don't know that is that the state reaches and grabs local money and cuts budgets to balance their books, which is absolutely outrageous.
Right. And
cities, counties, school districts, CSU.
Right.
The state grabs local money to solve their problem.
That's right. And then the budget is supposed to start on July 1. It doesn't. So then we're running on fumes. So we have all these problems. So I think the solution may be to call a constitutional convention. Constitutional convention would require us to elect delegates that would meet probably in Sacramento. Doesn't have to be. They could meet in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Madeira. I don't care. And they would then hammer out a constitutional convention that I would hope would be different than the one we have now. What we have done is we started with a constitutional convention in 1850, and we've passed amendments and amendments and amendments and amendments until we have the second longest constitution in the world, let alone for a state. And so we need to just toss it out and start all over again, fresh.
And one of the things that you really object to, and you reference this in your article, is the progressive agenda of initiative, referendum,
and
recall.
Yeah.
Why?
In 1912, the state was taken over by the Progressive Party, which was led by Hiram Johnson. He became our governor. He eventually became a senator, ran for president, didn't make it. They believed in a people's democracy. I believe in a representative democracy. People's democracy says that the people vote on everything, kind of like Switzerland. But we're a lot bigger than Switzerland, and that becomes a problem. So they have the initiative, which is you go around, you get enough signatures, you can get your ballot proposition on the ballot, and we have to vote on it, whether we understand it or not. A referendum is when the legislature shirks its responsibility and lets us vote.
Punts to the
which
people.
They did in May, and that was a disaster. And the recall is where you can recall someone from office, say the way we did Governor Davis, or even a Supreme Court justice like we did with Rose Bird. That kind of direct democracy, in my opinion, is very, very dangerous because I don't think the people are qualified to carry it out. I think what people are qualified to do is elect good representatives. They know good people when they see them, but they don't know a good proposition when they see it, and they don't know a bad proposition when they see it.
And the result of all these initiatives over time, as you point out in your article, is to lock in 89% of the budget for fixed education, this, that, so that the legislature only has 11% to play with of discretionary funding.
That's absolutely right. People don't realize that 89% of whatever budget is passed is locked in for prisons, for health care, for workmen's compensation, for schools, and so on and so forth. So that tiny 11% is all they can play with.
The thought just occurred to me, that being the case, maybe we should blame ourselves for tying the hands of the legislators and insisting that we control the 89%. Maybe we're to blame.
Well, I think we are in a number of ways. Proposition 13 is a poster child for this. It sounded so good that we're going to lock in property taxes for elderly people so that they wouldn't be taxed.
But they were losing their homes. The legislature failed to act, and then Jarvis stepped up. That was a legislative failing that triggered Prop 13.
But there are provisions in Prop 13 that people don't often talk about. Prop 13 also applies to businesses. Prop 13 allows you to move from one house to another and take your tax status with you. That has nothing to do with losing a house. So it was bad legislation, but it was bad legislation because it was by voter direct democracy.
Well, what else do we need to do besides call the convention? What do we want the convention to do? You've suggested, listen to this, eliminating the state Senate, going to a unicameral legislature.
Absolutely. Once the United States Supreme Court in the 60s ruled that one person equals one vote, that all voting for all legislative houses had to be proportional, there's no reason to have two of them. The Senate represents the same people that the Assembly does. So let's do away with the Senate. It's an unneeded expense. It hinders, it's one more hurdle the budget has to go through. Just make the Assembly the legislature, and then the governor can be the check on them.
But doesn't the U.S. Senate have the same problem?
No, the U.S. Senate is not proportional. It's exempted because it's in the Constitution. Wyoming gets 2 senators, New York gets 2 senators, California gets 2 senators, but that's not how it works county by county in California.
Okay, we'll be back with this fascinating discussion after these messages.